Welcome back to the Content That Grows podcast. Today I'm excited to be joined by Josh Palmer. Josh is the head of content for OnBoard and their additional product eScribe. He started his content marketing career as a staff reporter in 2006, then moved to companies like Angie's List and Xylo. Josh, excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking about going beyond, content marketing and just, thinking about just blog content and how you can build it out. So excited to have you with us.
Yeah, Nate, thank you for having me, and great pleasure to be here on the podcast.
All right. So, I think, before we started recording and kind of prepping for this, you shared some really impressive metrics, what you've accomplished with OnBoard. So I'd love for you just to kind of start with tell us a bit about what OnBoard does, first of all, and then the growth you've seen over the last 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Nate, you mentioned I'm with OnBoard. OnBoard is a board governance and collaboration platform. It serves a number of different industries, but if you just kind of winnow it down to what the elevator pitch is basically if you're a board-led organization, of which there's more than 5 million, in North America alone, anything from nonprofits to higher education to healthcare. We have a suite of software that enables you to better prepare, better execute, and then better kind of analyze your success and your effectiveness in that meeting. So I joined 2 years ago, and there was not an SEO or a content growth program in place. So it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of spread the good word about the product. And so, through kind of just iterative testing and just deploying some programs, we've had some amazing growth. I can't take credit for all of it. It certainly is a team effort. But yeah, when I joined in March of 21, we were about 15,000 monthly visitors. And then we just wrapped up 2023. We hit the kind of high water mark of 100,000 visitors per month. Awesome. We're producing on the order of more than 200 content assets per year, a mix between webinars, podcasts, blogs, videos, those types of things. One of the metrics I'm most proud of is that we were able to kind of alter or influence our traffic mix to the website. When I started, heavily dependent on paid and display advertising. We had a great word of mouth presence, but we didn't have a lot of really good search engine presence. Mm-hmm. So in 2022, we were about 33% of all of our traffic was coming from paid, 67% organic. And that was after, it was even worse than 21 when I first joined, but it's just kind of iterative progress again. And then this year we wrapped up, we got that paid traffic mix down to 13%. We'll always keep a portion of that because you can really highly target that and then make it much more effective. But then our organic traffic was overall at 87%, which is just
that's awesome.
Bonkers to me, even now when I say it. Yeah. We're also really happy that, we just came back from a customer kind of experience conference and really, the bottom line is kind of the most important thing in whatever you're doing in a marketing activity. So we were able to welcome more than 1,000 new logos or new customers to our business in 23, which we're really excited about. And then just an ROI it's very rough. It's not highly accurate but ROI in terms of content investment to influenced or sourced ARR is about 9x. So just really thrilled with our team and just what we've been able to do. So
yeah, it's really impressive. I appreciate you sharing the details there. The 9x thing for sure, and obviously, one of the benefits there is a lot of that. It's not just, a static thing, transactional the way paid is. Like there's, mm-hmm. You keep benefit like that multiple should continue to grow, over time. And then the other thing you mentioned, that shift being heavier on paid, the paid versus organic, paid being heavier, and then flipping pretty dramatically. Two things about that. One, I think it is one of the most powerful things for a early and growth stage company, especially as they head into a subsequent fundraising round, to be able to mm-hmm. show that, eases a lot of concern that you're not just raising capital to pay your way through everything. It's a bit more sustainable. And, I think when people hear that, the first thought is they didn't have to spend as much on paid because they're spending, they're getting more from organic. And maybe that's true for you, but in reality, what often happens is the budget actually stays similar or grows for paid but the organic growth outpaces it so dramatically that it just drives it down as a percentage, and the whole is actually growing substantially more, not just that you just shifted the allocation.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. That certainly we haven't. I wouldn't say aggressively decreased what we were spending on paid. We're certainly still investing in that channel, but that the organic growth, is certainly a bigger piece of the pie because it's grown so exponentially compared to paid, which is typically, like you said, a transactional environment where you're fighting and competing for every ad and bidding on ads and keywords and those types of things. We just reviewed this with our demand gen manager, and he said, that 13% may not go down because we're not only are we able to kind of reduce the spread that we have to address with paid because we're shifted that spread or kind of that wider targeting into organic, but we're much better able to get those right-sized buyers, the ideal customer profiles. Right. The really, really high intent keywords that we're always going to spend money on, but we're much more focused on that. So it's a much more efficient spend overall.
Yeah, totally agree. And not to keep harping on this point, but I think it's definitely a good one. It's like the flip side, that I've seen, maybe a bit more in consulting and just like when I had chatted with people while I was still at Sprout, like, because we don't really do with paid with 10 speeds, so we don't get into that as much, but when you don't start building that and even if it's not like SEO and organic, if you don't have something else offsetting the paid, like it's proven in like every year they do studies that just generally CPCs are increasing depending on the industry somewhere between like 8 and 30%, so that's automatically, working against you. And to your point on like, you're seeing the benefit of your ad dollars being more and more focused on the high intent. When you're dependent on paid, then you are seeing the opposite. You have to try and keep going farther and farther. And the wider you go, the more noise you have, versus signal, and you get less and less efficient spend. And it's just like a death spiral.
Yeah. And just that conversion rate optimization is so much harder to figure out when you're chasing so many different terms. The hypothesis when we came into the business was, we can do cost-effective, efficient growth through organic, and we can continue that line or that growth of search traffic volume without having to increase the investment like you do on paid to address a wider market. For example, we just wrapped up our budget and planning. I'm not spending any more on content this year than I am last year, but we're going to continue to grow that search volume and that search traffic because we have the snowball kind of already rolling down the hill, so to speak, and it just gets more efficient with the more kind of content and just targeted search traffic approach that you have there. I don't know if that's the word I would use. If you held a gun to me, held a gun to my head, but again, just once you get the snowball rolling down the hill and you're doing the right things on the technical back end and you start ranking, and you're refreshing content to make sure that it's staying in that competitive space or in those competitive SERPs, it's so much easier to maintain that traffic than to build it, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it's, I think for anyone who's listening and kind of thinking about how to break away from that, if you are kind of in that pattern, the thing that I think we've seen, like a period where we've gained new clients, is when a new head of marketing or acquisition or demand gen joins a company, sees that they're spending maybe 80 to 100,000 per month on paid search, if not more, and they dig in and basically carve out 15 to 20K a month of the least effective spend, things they just shouldn't be spending on, but they are because of that growth. Yeah. And they say, we're going to cut those campaigns, shift this over and start building this up. And so we get to be a part of that transition of, changing the ratio of paid to organic. So,
and you kind of hit the nail on the head there too, that, you have to be able to identify that within the context of the organization and where it's at its growth stage. You're going to have to pay for paid if you're, a net new company that just started up last month, because there's no other way to do it. But once you get in that stage where, the specialists start coming on, the mid-level line managers, SEO strategists, head of marketing. I joined 6 months after our head of marketing joined, which was a really good opportunity for me.
Yep.
But yeah, once you're starting to listen more and staff more with those specialists and not those marketing generalists, yeah, that's typically where I've seen that strategy pay off as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into the next point, and maybe kind of the main point of the discussion is really, you mentioned kind of getting things going, getting the foundation. Like, okay, we know things are working on the SEO side. We're creating content. We're getting traffic. Kind of talk us through the progression you've seen. Kind of as you said, okay, we're doing that. We could put someone in charge, or however you structure it. Now we're going to start moving beyond just this, building on top of it, moving into like new types of marketing, new types of content. So kind of walk us through what you've seen there.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think just some context with my career might be helpful there too. So you mentioned that I started with Angie's List. I literally started as a staff reporter on a print magazine, which taught me kind of it was brand journalism, but we took the journalism part of it really seriously. And that, as I grew with that company, when I started, there were 200 people there, and when I left 10 years later, there were 2,000. So it had a great growth story. I had the opportunity to work in a lot of different areas in marketing, just kind of progressively iterating through different teams and functions, but always with a marketing mindset kind of first. So when I joined OnBoard, I had kind of a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. But like we mentioned on the pre-call, that you kind of have to start with the foundation of SEO. Everybody knows that content pyramid of, at the very bottom is high frequency. So that's your social posts. And the next one that's most important is your SEO, because you want to be publishing on a much more frequent cadence than a little bit above social. But as we were able to stand up these programs, we would kind of say, hey, this is working great. Everything's going as expected. The next bet I want to make is, let's say, webinars and thought leadership. We don't have a regular non-sales, non-demo webinar where we can talk about the things that are important to our prospects or our customers. Let them hear from experts and leaders in their field. I'll do an interview, or I'll get somebody to do a presentation. We'll find a book author that wants to promote their book, and just bring them on and have a conversation. So once you can kind of establish that first bet, that gives you so much more leeway into making other bets. Our webinar program has been pretty successful too. So that led us into a podcast. It's not that different of a format. It's not that different content, just a new channel, right? And then, of course, if you're paying attention to the whole organization, and you're in a position of maybe being a content market leader or a content strategist that has inputs into your sales teams, your customer experience teams, you can grow that success or grow those kind of patches a little bit more. Say, hey, sales, what do you need in terms of assets? What could I do for you? You're going to go speak at a conference. Can I help you with that presentation? Can I give you some notes based on the research I've done on our prospects or our internal data? Yeah. So as you kind of spread throughout the organization and build that connective tissue, people start to realize that content is not just blogs on the website so we get search traffic. It's something that can be a strength and a value for the wider organization if you're enabling other people's and other functions to do their job better just by the virtue of content.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that reminds me of Emily Kramer from MKT1 talks about content being fuel, and and then like marketing channels are different engines and stuff. So I feel like that. I mean, would you agree with that? It kind of sounds like that's what you're saying, but how do you see that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're kind of you practice proactive curiosity, you can find that fuel, that content, those stories in every pocket of the organization. There's a great story somewhere. You're talking to we have a great customer success manager on our team, or he's actually our education manager for support materials. Just a one-off conversations. Like, what did you do before this? He was a producer on a Hollywood reality TV show. So of course I'm going to put that in an employee spotlight or something like that, because those are the interesting things that you can find in different pockets of the organization that elevate the brand and the product beyond just being this transactional, I need software, hey, we provide it, where you're buying from people and having an authentic experience as part of that. And I think the more that you can show who you are as an organization, if you're a good organization like OnBoard is, the more that people will trust you when it gets beyond that initial impression, and maybe they're taking a phone call from an AE, or they have a problem with the product and they need to contact support. So I just really love talking to people and hearing their stories. And I think I have a really dream job for being able to do that in a brand kind of creative content capacity. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's really, really smart. And I think, I was fortunate. Will admit that I wasn't necessarily the one driving this, but I had the opportunity to witness some of the power of like, not just letting content be a marketing thing when I was at Sprout, and also just not like you kind of assume like everyone in the company knows we're doing this. They're kind of aware of like what's available. That's very much not the case. Like they're not keeping tabs on what you're tracking, and so we had some people on our team that just started getting really good about mapping that out and saying, "Hey, look, we have over 3,000 blog posts. We have webinars. We have guides." And going to sales and kind of mapping out like, here's some different things you're talking to, so that when they get off a call, they can go, "Hey, we were just talking about this. Check out this resource we have," or whatever. And then same thing with like customer success and keeping people happy and upgrading, and same thing with customer support, and just a lot of opportunities to equip them. And what really was eye opening to me was how like utterly excited people in those different parts of the company were to be like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea this existed. You've unlocked so much for me." And it really, so we preach that a lot now. It's just like helping companies understand the content isn't just for the search engine. It isn't just for that one webinar that maybe 30 people came, maybe 300 came. There's like so many things you can continue to do and spread out and then move through it. I actually want to go back to one thing you said. You talked about like in the sales presentation, like, "Hey, I understand some stuff from the customer," or like the research I've done. Like, I guess talk about that part, like really as a marketer, understanding the customer and your product and the impact that has on like developing strategy as well as it being an asset to the rest of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll cover off on one point that, one of your kind of, your playbooks or your blueprints that any content marketer should have is internal marketing. Because like you said, if you build that presentation or that deck or that power or that PDF and it just sits in a SharePoint drive or something like that and nobody's using it, it's useless. So you really have to do a lot of self-advocacy and self-promotion. I know that's uncomfortable for some people, but otherwise, if you're building it and spending hours on this asset, blog, thought leadership, whatever, and nobody uses it, it's essentially valueless. So internal marketing is huge, any size organization. So our customer profile, we've had the benefit of a lot of data. We've got some amazing demand gen. I call them marketing engineers because they literally come from comp sci and engineering backgrounds, and they've just happened to be marketers. So we're extremely data driven. We've always been data driven as an organization. But in the board governance space, like I mentioned, we have 5 million organizations that we could address with our product, right? They sit in these discrete categories. So nonprofit, higher education, credit unions, community banks, healthcare, public companies, private companies, VC, holding, tech, all those things, they have their own unique nuance to them. So a nonprofit board, although they're doing some of the same actions and motions as a credit union board or a public company board would do, that collaboration is much different. And so the way that we have to treat those customers or those prospects or those suspects when they're visiting us on the website is different. We have to create content that's tailored to their needs. So we spend a lot of time talking. Nonprofit is probably the highest percentage of our customer base by volume. So we knew from the get-go that we needed to tailor content to that category of customer for our product. And then you go into a little bit of, you mentioned the internal research. One of the things that I love, that I've been able to experience in every organization that I've gone to is just rich data. That data, you may not be a survey creator or a statistician or a kind of a more data-oriented person to begin with. But if you can interpret that data, not only for your organization and for the customers that you serve, but also for unique stakeholders within your business, so that's sales or customer success, if you can't find and interpret that data for them, they're most likely not going to do it on their own. Just a great example. You and I had the pleasure of working together in Xylo. When I came to Xylo, Xylo is a SaaS subscription management, basically a reference and a database. So they can tell you that, they get access to your system. They say, hey, you're spending 2 times, you have 2 separate contracts for Zoom or some other collaboration software. You're spending X on this one, you're spending X on this one. If we did an enterprise account, we'd save you X amount of dollars. So you'd get down data about users, about spends, about actual activity on those apps, those types of things. Rich goldmine of data, like how do you get that out of the market? So like one of the things that I did, and I'm still really proud of when I see it pop up on LinkedIn, is like we need to have a benchmark report. Let's crunch this data for people and tell them what we see behind the kind of the curtain of our crazy machine learning model. When I worked in healthcare, it was a very similar thing. It was like, okay, how many people are we serving per year? What are the Halo stats? What kind of health outcomes are we driving? So it's applicable across every region, not every region, but every kind of type of industry.
Yeah.
And then even finding those little nuggets or gold mines of data within your organization. It might not be something that's customer facing, but something that you can do to inform sales. I love Gong. If you're in an organization that has Gong,
Yeah.
It is one of the most amazing tools you can ever think of to get customer messaging right, to get the customer questions on that first call right, to understand how sales is actually pitching the product and what's effective and what's not there. Gong isn't built for brand messaging, but I went through Gong, pulled out some really interesting themes, maybe dumped some of those into an AI tool and said, hey, what are the themes on these 50 calls?
Yeah.
And that got me to a really great update on our brand messaging, because we're talking the way that customers talk when they're on the call. We're answering their questions the way they should be answered from really highly successful sales folks. And then other pieces of the data too, like for instance, we do a really quick pre-discovery call survey for every one of our prospects. I just recently found this information and I was just gobsmacked. We had more than 1,200 responses on this pre-discovery call survey over the last 18 months. And one of the key questions is, are you using our product, or are you using a product that's similar to ours today, or are you using some other kind of functional way to complete your board meeting process? 67% of our prospects said no. We're using email and PDF. Only 1 in 4 of our prospects was using a competitor. So for me, as somebody that works and thinks about like what the customer experience is when we're coming onto our website, is like, we're not necessarily competing against these other software firms that are selling similar products. We're competing against old school email and PDF. So that really changes the messaging and the tenor. And even some of our content opportunities are a lot different. We have competitive pages for our competitors, but we never had a competitive page for email and PDF. So that's just some of the things that like data and just staying curious about your company and your organization as a marketer can unlock for you.
Yeah, that's really great stuff you shared. And I agree, the insight there that you like, a lot of folks do assume that there's a baseline. I mean, we certainly ran into that at Sprout all the time. Like, you assume someone was coming from a tool, and you then later learn like, there's a lot of people that go log into Twitter, and then they go log into Facebook, and they log into Instagram. Like,
or I'm always
doing it very differently and going into each to pull metrics and all this stuff. And just in general, I mean, just a Gong for sure. Like it's so easy to just get like the proximity bias or whatever, where you're just like, you're in it, you know it, and you assume other people know it because you know it, and you listen to a call and you're like, are you serious? Like, they don't know that it's on our website like 4 times, but like clearly it's not making its way to them, or it's not resonating in a certain way. And it's really, really humbling to just listen to. It can be torturous, at times, to be like, like, I feel like you should know this, but the more you realize that, the more you realize like that's the reality, is it's not clear to them. And it's an opportunity to make it better.
And that might be your customers or even your teams of just, I sent out this brand messaging document that's supposed to be helpful for sales, and it's obvious that nobody's read it, or that, they're not saying the things that we think they should. On the flip side, if you're talking to a highly successful salesperson, like, they don't need new messaging. They have got it down. You should be listening to them. I think it's just one of those things. And you mentioned, how does understanding how your product work and the customer base. The other thing that's really important for us is you think about, and we've learned this over 2 decades of being in this collaboration software environment, that the majority of our customers are, our users are directors of boards, right? And that's different at every different industry that we serve. But for the majority of those, your board of directors is probably the most senior and tenured and experienced people within your organization. Well, guess what? That means they have the least amount of kind of maybe digital savvy. They're not a digital native. So when we talk about our product, one of the things that we talk about is ease of use. Like, we've made it super simple. It's not this really complex, onerous product to use, because we know that the end user may not be the most digitally savvy person. So that goes back into that product customer kind of feedback loop as well. Is like, we have to be letting people know that this is simple, this is easy, because they want it to be that way. So
yeah, that's great. So I mean, as we head towards wrapping up, I would love to know, it's still kind of in that spirit of, moving on into new content types or channels or anything like that. Would love to know, like, what's new for you, and to the extent that you can share, kind of how you're adapting your plans to not lose the momentum you've already built, while continuing to build into new things.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're continuing to invest in content. So our OnBoard side of the house is one brand, and then we have a kind of a category adjacent product that has a very unique ICP and eScribe. It's for municipal governments. So we get to have a very mature content and SEO and marketing program already set up on kind of our big brand, so to speak. And then we get to do the fun, like, hey, we're going to take this from 0 to 1 on our smaller brand, smaller addressable market with our eSkype product. So that's really fun to have kind of 2 content operations operating at the same time, and they're different scales and have different needs and wants. It keeps it fun and interesting. I might be undiagnosed ADD, so I have a short attention span in that regard. But certainly continuing our thought leadership programs, we're trying to do a better job on our podcast. I know that podcasts, not only for listens, but your podcast, I see it all the time in my feed, but like thinking about that in a different way of, listens and subscriptions isn't the metric we're chasing. We're chasing social engagement and audience development. And how can we, cut that to make sure it's the best possible display of our brand and our thought leadership in a social environment, and not just in, Apple Music or Google Play Store, those types of things. Absolutely. And then one of the things I'm really excited about is that, we just came off this customer experience conference literally last week. I'm still processing some of the photos for it. But there was a strong alignment that we have to be uniform and standard across every touch point of our customer experience, from their first visit on their website all the way through their implementation and their training, then the renewal, their advocacy or referral program. So I'm really excited to be able to like dive into the rest of the business and see all the unique ways that we could, help support or be supported by other parts of the business. And then we have a really strong, like I mentioned, our customer profile is, there's a lot of people in nonprofit. There are a lot of people in higher education. Board governance isn't kind of a very clear, transparent thing that a lot of people know about. It's very opaque. It's behind a closed door. You think about it's the highest strategic level of an organization. So it can't be transparent, but there's this great appetite from our users to know more about the product, not our product. So excuse me, I'll start over. To know more about that human system of governance, how those processes work. So we're looking at things of, anything from an LMS to, maybe we provide some kind of certification or continuing education credit, get a credit to be a provider in that, or build a community, because we know through our content and the way that the people have engaged with it, even anecdotally, I came to your website. I served on a committee position for a number of years on this nonprofit, and they asked me to become a board chair. The first thing I Googled, how to become a board chair. Your website came up and gave me the information I needed. Yep. So we had this educational experience, and they said, and then when the time came, we said, we're going to evaluate a new product. You're the first person I thought of. Yep. So how do we build more of that community and just that unity among our customers of like, hey, we're here not just to sell you a product, but to help you get better at your job in the next stage of your board professional career. So that's really exciting for me, even, 3-4 years into the job so far.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. Hopefully I didn't pitch it too much.
No, it's great. I think it's the necessary context, right? Like, it's hard to appreciate the the content program part of it without, understanding the product a bit more. So
Yeah,
audience
and that's the
and
one thing
leads and all of that. Yeah.
yeah, that's one thing I always like. I say this in not a flippant way, but I feel like curiosity is sometimes underrated. If you can overcome that feeling of, I'm going to ask a stupid question on the all hands call about our financials, or I want to know, what is that investment that we got from a PE VC firm? How's that going to be applied? Just a better understanding of the business, not just the marketing function or just like how content plays in it. I feel like that's always been kind of the thing that's unlocked the next steps in my career, is knowing how the business runs and how my small patch fits into that overall program. If you don't know that, you're kind of going in blind or not being able to fully optimize that portion of or that function of the business overall.
Yes. All right. I'm going to say this because you brought that up. I 100% agree. And I think the two things, or we'll call it three, the two things within the business that I think are the most powerful things to understand as a marketer, is one, like, buddy up with finance and really understand, because
Marketing's job is to spend money. You got to do a good job. Yeah.
I think there's a tendency to like come up with this cute way that you've like justified the investment. And when you see the reality of that, and from the top level view, understand you're talking about like investing in this or increasing your spend or giving you a head count versus this part of the business or making the product, like you have to gain that appreciation for like how the money is managed and like where investments come from to really bolster that up. And the second is really understanding how your product is built and like how it's made, and the engineering side of it, I think, can seem excessive and unnecessary, but really understanding a lot of that, I think, goes a long way. And then the third, which is like outside of your company, is if you're in SaaS, I think you need to understand how venture funding works, and like, the importance and like why people, like, it's not like, oh, we let's hit our goal. I think it's like we have to hit these numbers because this is the benchmark to raise our next round based on our spend rate. If we don't hit that, then we have to raise a down round, or we have to cut, resources and staff to like preserve runway until we reach that milestone. So we can round, like, there's a lot of things that's like, understand the type of company you're in, understand the ecosystem, how it works, how investments are made is dramatically important.
Yeah, and just having that context of, are we at the end of our runway or at the beginning of our runway? Like, that can give you some foresight to like how much budget accountability am I going to have this year? How much analysis and kind of business case building I'm going to have to do for a new program? Yeah. When we received our last round, the first year after a new round, it's pretty much a lot of investments get green light right away. When you get into year 2, 3, or 4, like, you have to be much more judicious with that cash to preserve that runway. I think the other thing too is Nate, you mentioned this, and you're strong in this, and just knowing what those acronyms mean, like CAC, like, why is that important to us? Customer acquisition cost, return on ad spend, those types of things. If you can justify your spending, even if you don't know the acronyms, but know how your department's finances flow into the rest of the business and how it maybe improves. It might be your own little patch of metrics to say search volume or domain rating or those types of things. Really important just to have a business mindset about it, because otherwise you're just barking up the content tree. And then the last thing I think that's really important too is just like you mentioned, understanding the ecosystem, understanding how you play against competitors, just understanding where you're in the business, and how the impact that you can create. I've always had the pleasure of having people who are always really open and transparent as co-founders or leaders in the business. Yeah. And most people, if you ask them, they're happy to answer it, because that means you have a deeper and richer understanding of the business works and how you can make a greater contribution.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Very inspiring message today.
I think we could go for another hour. So,
dude, I did one with Jimmy daily, and it went to like an hour 15. I was just like, thanks.
Yeah. It's all good stuff. We'll have to have you back, and we'll do part 2.
I would love it, and especially like even getting into like operational stuff. Like, how's your team built? Like, what are you investing in? I love talking about that stuff. So I'm a geek in that regard. So.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
It was a great conversation. So we'll wrap it up. For anyone still listening with us at this point, be sure to check out Content That Grows on the platform of your choice, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, any of those. And please like and subscribe and get future episodes. And we'll wrap it up there. Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Nate. It's been fun.